live for a little while and I'm not seeing anyone else. Either people don't exactly have time right now, or this is just a subject they really don't want to talk about, which I understand because it's not something I want to talk about either. But we need to do this. We need to talk about it. We need people to hear. Kind of a little bit stressful that I'm putting myself out there and no one, the majority of society doesn't want to hear it. And I think that's one of the reasons that it's gotten so bad in life. Well, I guess I'll go ahead and start. And I'll go ahead and tell you, since you're actually listening and you actually care. So that means a lot to me. At least one person does. So as you know, my name is Sarah. Over the last few months, the country has been reading many stories about people who didn't come forward after sexual assault. The response has been victim blaming, and not only denying the assault happened, but claiming that the large silent numbers don't exist. Some even claim those that are coming forward are seeking their 10 minutes of fame. In the spotlight, of course. The hashtag why I didn't report was created so we could be heard. It doesn't seem to be working. Seeing the words in a minuscule paragraph isn't enough. We know they are not spending their time reading our posts. Let's face it, they don't want to sit down and read a long article, and this one is definitely long. This video is being made today to encourage others like me to make videos. Tag it with the hashtag why I didn't report so they can hear and not read. As I discovered last night when I was trying to set this up, I found that we can share a video, and when we bring it up, if we go to settings, we can make the image in a way where people can't see our faces, but they can see our movement and they can hear our voices and body language without actually being able to physically identify us. And I encourage, one of the reasons that we don't come forward is because of who it is. If they're in a position of power, or maybe we've been able to escape them, doing this puts us back in danger if they can clearly identify us. So I am not going to put full names. A couple of them I put their first names, no last names. The first one I didn't put names, and I'll explain that in a little bit. I said that. This video is being made today to encourage others like me to make this video. Tag it with the hashtag why I didn't report so they can hear and they don't have to sit down and read, since we know they don't like doing that. Today you are going to hear my story. Before I start, I need you to know it is a difficult story for me to tell, and it will be difficult for many to hear. Very difficult, at least for those of us who have experienced sexual assaults. Since it is very difficult for me to tell my story, I have typed up my story up and had a friend, well, I didn't get a chance to have my friend edit it, and I hope that it's not too bad. I will be reading from it, so I tell you everything in chronological order and can tell you all the points I feel are very important. Without reading from the paper, I tend to sound like I am speaking gibberish. Looking at the written word helps me enunciate and control my emotions a bit better, so I can get through this information for you. We will soon get to my story. First, I would like to say thank you to my friends that helped me edit what I wanted to say. And even though I didn't get them to send it, edit, they reminded me of a few things I wanted to say, and I want to thank my friends. And are now hopefully sharing this video on feeds with hopefully more followers, although it's a bad time of day. I have placed what I wanted to say in the description, Every time I make a mistake, it is because of high neurotransmitters running through my body, making my emotions difficult to control. You might hear me stumble over my words, which you already have, and read something again, which I already have. I will pause often to prevent tears or anger. Please bear with me. I will also pause from time to time to scroll down, since I decided not to print and actually read it off of my WordPress that I went ahead and published this morning. I have been sexually assaulted 5 times. The first was when I was around 7 years old. My mother moved us to Tulsa, Oklahoma. She found a custodial job at a private university, which I will not name because things have come out about the university and I don't want to get sued. So I'm not going to say the name of the university. I became fond of the staff. My mother took a few classes and I was able to sit in the back and listen to the class. My favorite teacher at the school was the art professor. He always treated us with kindness and respect. One day, I was playing with a child of another employee, which I won't name because I don't know if they want to know. Anyone wants to know what happened to them. My mother's boss came up to us and asked us to do something for him. He told us we needed to go to the art professor and tell him he is fired. We both really liked the art teacher, so we couldn't get the courage up to do it. We actually walked down the hallway. The art class was in this dome building. I kind of liked the shape. So we walked down to the hall. We actually got all the way to the door, and we discussed it. We just couldn't do it. We went back to my mother's boss to tell him we didn't do it. We told his secretary, and she called into him and let him know and asked us to wait. He came out of his office. He looked down at us and said, "You didn't do what you were told, and now you two must be punished." He had a smile on his face. The look on his face was something from a horror movie. The look that you see when they knew you wouldn't do it, and they would get exactly what they wanted. The look scared me, but we went into his office anyway. I was by the door, and he took my friend to his desk and placed him on his desk. He pulled my friend's pants down, and he started hurting him. I couldn't see what he was doing, but I know it wasn't spanking him. I ran over to his desk, picked up a letter opener that he always kept on the desk in the middle, and I went around and tried to stab him with it to stop hurting my friend. I tried to stop him, but he grabbed my arm and he laughed. He let my friend go, and he lifted me on the desk. He held my hands over my head with one hand and pulled down my bottoms. He pulled down my bottoms. He pulled down my bottoms with his other hand. I couldn't move. My head was pinned down by my arms. I couldn't see what he penetrated with me with, but all I remember is it really hurt. I started to scream and cry, but no one came to stop him. I don't know how long it was. When he finally let me go, I ran straight into my mom. She was with the head of a nonprofit that was allowed to use the school stadium, and some of the other employees. Their kids were with them. I did as I was told, and I placed my hand on her arm to let her know I needed to talk to her. She looked down at me and said yes. I told her what happened. I was still crying. She now knelt down and told me, "You are exaggerating. I am sure whatever punishment he did was perfectly okay." She then stood up and told the others, "She's just trying to get attention because of what happened to her sisters." They wouldn't listen to me. The head of the nonprofit tried to do something about it, but they wouldn't listen to him, and he couldn't risk pushing it because they needed the stadium too badly. After that, anytime my mother's boss was near me, the operator of the nonprofit would hide me behind him. He did his best to prevent it from happening again. After that, every time I saw him, I gave him a hug. I don't know if he ever found out that's why I was giving him so many hugs. It meant a lot to me that he would hide me behind him. He believed me even though no one else did. I did come forward, and I was ignored. After that, I didn't feel comfortable being around most people. I felt fear when someone touched me. I had very few friends, and I didn't like playing with anyone. I learned to stay quiet. I was taught if a man wanted to do something to me, it was okay, no matter what he wanted to do to me. I'm going to take a minute to breathe before I go to the next sexual assault. Obviously, I can't prevent myself from completely crying, but at least you can hear my voice. The second assault was when I was a teenager. One day, a boy I was dating came over, and we were sitting in the living room and watched TV. But he wanted to make out. He said, "Just a little kiss." So we started kissing. I heard him unzip his pants. I felt a little fear, but couldn't seem to pull away. I just seemed to freeze. He pushed my head down and held me on his dick. He began to push it in and out of my mouth. I started choking and crying, but he didn't stop. When he finished, he just left me on the floor. My sister's boyfriend dropped her off about an hour after it happened and saw something was wrong with me. He asked, and I told him what happened. I told him I knew there was no point in reporting it. He got pissed off, and he found the guy and slashed the tires of his car. I still remember the look on his face when he came back and told me he found the guy and slashed his tires. He was so excited that he slashed this jerk's tires. And oddly enough, it did make me feel a little bit better. I can just see that jackass walking out to his car and seeing his tires flat on his precious little car. It's really terrible, I know, but something bad happened to him. Not nearly as bad as what he did, but something bad happened. I never opened the door to him again, and anytime he showed up, I called my friend's boyfriend, and he got rid of him. After a while, he left me alone. The third time, the violence in my home was escalating. My sisters, my friend, my employer, and I felt that my life was in danger at home. We made a plan to get me out. They helped me move while my mother was at work, so she couldn't stop me. I moved in with one of my sisters with the help of my father, which many of you know I now live with, and he has helped a lot. He really has, and he knows all this, and he's a really great dad. I wish I had him when I was growing up. Let's see. With the help of my father, I was legally emancipated through a restraining order against my mother. I couldn't continue to live with my sister because she has a lot of issues to work on. I couldn't get an apartment on my own because every time they heard my name, they thought of my sister I was living with. I'll tell you why. When she got upset with her husband, she would kind of storm out of the apartment, and sometimes that meant breaking doors on the way out, and she would stand in the middle of the street screaming and yelling at her husband until he came out and got on his hands and knees and apologized. So they didn't want me to live there because they thought I was just like her. Unfortunately, employers that knew of her had the same issue with hiring me. But the majority of apartments in Oklahoma was all by the same company, so they all knew about my sister. They all knew, which wasn't helpful in getting an apartment, but I had to move out of there. Now, the tears are slowing down. Maybe I can actually read this better. I couldn't continue. My sister's home, can't see it. My sister's home wasn't much better than my mom's. I started dating my sister's husband's best friend. His name was Jeff. He graduated from the private college my mother used to work for. The one from my first sexual assault, which hopefully you can rewind or you can watch later to hear about that one. I was taught men that came from that college were pure of heart and mind. He offered me a place to live with him. It was my only option. I thought it was safe there. I was taught that the men who went to that college were morally perfect and they could do no wrong. Anyone who came from there, I'm supposed to automatically listen to. I was wrong. Shortly after moving in, he quit his job. The bills started piling up and my paycheck from Foley's wasn't good enough. In the fall, our power was cut off and I became sick. One morning when preparing for the day, I started to choke on oatmeal. Okay, so apparently we lost the connection for a second there, but we came back. What I was saying was, it's kind of humiliating when you're eating breakfast in the morning and you start choking on oatmeal. Oatmeal of all things. It didn't get caught in my air tube. It was oatmeal. It was the weirdest thing. Kind of petrifying too. I couldn't stop choking, so he took me to a doctor. The doctor gave me something to stop my gag reflex so he could take a look. I had a small opening in the back of my throat that didn't belong, and I had an infection. Big surprise. He put me on antibiotics and told me I needed bed rest for a couple of weeks. When we got home, Jeff told me he would go back to work for his previous employer because we really needed the money. He said he would call Foley's for me, and he would call Foley's for me and let me know that I couldn't come into work for a while and why. As far as I knew, he did. I couldn't access a phone at home because the only phone we had was a wireless phone. Nokia, one of the early versions. Wasn't quite the original bricks, but it was pretty big. Sorry about blowing my nose on camera. I did actually try to go to my neighbors and try to get a hold of them so I could contact them myself, but they were either all constantly at work when I could go out, or the phones were disconnected. The main office phone was actually disconnected, and I couldn't even use the office phone. That's helpful. Let's see, where was I? The only option I really had was to trust that Jeff would actually call Foley's. Call Foley's and tell them that I was sick and ordered a bed rest. Well, when I got back to work, I walked in and did what I normally did at the beginning of the day to start getting ready. I would go up to the cash register, I would sign into the cash register, I would check the receipts and everything like that. Well, the other employees looked at me like I was completely crazy. Actually, made sense under the circumstances. My boss came over and took me to the office and explained I didn't work there anymore. Apparently Jeff did not inform Foley's. I gave them the paperwork at that time about why I didn't come to work, but they considered it a no-show. I had lost my job and been placed on the do not hire list. I was upset because I really did enjoy working at Foley's. It was a great job. There was one time, I feel really bad about this, but it was really late and I fell asleep on one of the displays. I was doing some work on the bed and I fell asleep. Apparently my boss had watched, and he didn't seem too mad at me, but there weren't any customers. I'm sure he would have been upset if there were customers, but I fell asleep, and I don't think it was very long, and he was very understanding about it. I was really thankful that he was understanding, and I really liked getting to walk people around the textiles department and show them and help them pick designs for their home. It really is fun. And some of them would come back and tell me how it worked out, and they would beam when it worked out. I only had one person that came back and said, it worked, but I think I want to try to go in a different way. But it really was fun. I got to learn so much about things like towels and bedding, and it just was wonderful. Really did like it. I tried to get a new job, but everywhere I interviewed said they knew I was on the do not hire list and refused to give me a job. Jeff quit his job again, and our financial situation kept declining. We finally got an eviction notice. We had no power, no phone, and now we were being evicted. He suggested maybe I could try working at a strip club, which didn't seem like a horrible idea. I mean, a girl that never got that much attention working at a strip club, I would have men actually give me attention, of course, being extremely young and naive and having just turned 18. Not so much thought there. I was extremely naive. Gotta lower it again. He told me how I could get us a lot of money, and he was sitting there telling me how much of money other women made. He asked if there was anyone I could practice on before starting at a local strip club. There was a man that was nice enough to give me a ride during the court proceedings earlier in the year. Jeff called him, and come to find out, it was his friend's birthday. Well, look. After an amateur strip dance, I went into the bathroom to get dressed. Jeff came in and told me that the customer asked to have sex with me. He said he could do $50 for 5 minutes. Actually, Jeff's the one that said $50 for 5 minutes. The guy told him he had $50, and Jeff said 5 minutes. That was before he talked to me, by the way. Jeff told me if I didn't do it, we would be out on the street, and that it was my fault. I told him I didn't really feel comfortable with that. He gave me a look as if I was destroying everything by not doing this, and that I was going to get us out on the street. I told him, well, I guess it's up to you. But I really didn't want to do it. We came out of the bathroom, and he told them yes. They took me into a room, put me on a mattress that was on the floor. I don't remember if he was wearing a condom or not. He was a very large man, and when he entered, it hurt. I didn't put this, but I remember laying there, and I had my hands on the man's arms, and I just laid there, and I was staring at the ceiling, and I felt like I was no better than that mattress. I laid there just like a brick. After 5 minutes, Jeff said the time was up, and he took me home. All the way home, I was quiet. I felt dirty. I felt worthless. When we got home, we took a shower. He told me to sing him my favorite song from Quest from Camelot. It was the song Looking Through Your Eyes. I tried. I started to sing, but before I could get through the first chorus, I broke down in tears. He looked down at me and said, "Well, at least we know you have a heart." He left me in the shower, curled up and crying. He knew what was going to happen the entire time. He used me, and I was taught I never had the right to say no to a man. Things like this continued until he sold me to a porn site. The owner figured out what was going on and helped me contact my father, who helped me get to Oregon and away from Jeff. For years, Jeff wouldn't leave me alone. Honestly, I don't think he would still leave me alone if I hadn't changed my number so many times and begged my family not to give him any information about me. I didn't come forward or tell anyone until years later because I knew no one would believe it wasn't my fault or my idea. I knew if I tried to fight him, it would be worse off. I didn't have anywhere to turn, and Jeff knew it. I was isolated and vulnerable, and I knew the courts would never do anything about it, so I didn't report it. One of the reasons I didn't report it is on the way to meet his parents one time, he told me that his father was not only a pastor, but he was the pastor for the White House. Who's going to believe a girl from a poor, abusive home over the son of one of the White House pastors? Who's going to believe me? So I didn't come forward. I didn't say anything. I didn't think anyone would listen. I didn't know what else to do. I'm beginning to think I'm going to need to get another box of tissues. When I was trying to write this down the first time, I kind of went through a box of tissues, and now I'm thinking I might end up going through another one. Sorry for the nose blowing again. When I post this on YouTube, I'm kind of hoping that I can edit things like that out. At least I think I can post it to YouTube if I can download it onto my computer. Yes, I'm fully aware that currently no one is listed as watching, but maybe people will watch the video later. The fourth time was when I was 21 and had just started working for a truck driver. The driver didn't keep up with his paperwork, so I was hired to do it for him. As the days went on, more and more work was put on me. I wasn't just doing the paperwork, but also adjusting the axles and observing the loads and unloads and anything else he had to do. One of the things he had me do was put this zip tie on the truck to make sure that the load wasn't tampered with during transport. I actually kind of like the idea, but I should mention that while I was on the road with him, I found out that the truck drivers knew how to take off these zip tie things without damaging them, and they would actually, some of them would actually take some of the cargo they were shipping. Just for trucking companies out there to be aware of, and shipping company places that are shipping, they should know that there are other ways, and you might want to find a different locking method. kind of wise idea. Anyway, anything else? Let's see, where was I? Yeah, anything else we needed to do. One day we ended up driving through Reno. I was behind on my paperwork because we didn't have enough downtime for me to work on it. We pulled into a truck stop and decided to stay the night. I grabbed the paperwork and went inside to sit down and do the work while I get something to eat and drink. Well, I was stressed because I was behind on the paperwork. Well, he came in and offered to get me something to eat and drink, and for the first time I allowed it because, again, I had a lot of paperwork to do. Where was I? I normally wouldn't allow, as I said, I normally wouldn't allow it, but I had to get the paperwork out of the way. Not long after I ate, I started feeling a bit weird. We got into a shuttle and headed into downtown Reno. I remember pulling away and asking if he was sure he wanted to do this. The problem is I don't remember what I was asking, if he was sure he wanted to do. I don't remember that. I don't remember. I remember answering questions about myself to someone behind a desk. I think the desk was white. Can't remember. I remember a nice woman asking me if I wanted a dress. Well, of course I wanted a dress. I kind of like dresses. I don't remember what I answered to her either. I remember a nice woman asking me for a dress. Later, I remember being yelled at for asking what was in the drink. He handed me a drink and he told me to drink it, and I asked him what it was, and he got angry at me. It was glass, I think. Anyway, he yelled at me and just told me to drink it. And I remember my purse melting when a guy was showing us a lot of cash. He was probably drunk. The next thing I remember is waking up in the truck without my clothes. Come to find out, I was married and I only had one alcoholic beverage that I know of. I have never been drunk in my life. Never. I think I might have been tipsy once, but I've never been drunk. I have a high tolerance, so I was scared and I couldn't figure out what was going on. When I was in college, I found out that I'm probably alcohol intolerant, which is why alcohol doesn't affect me the same way. When I drink alcohol, it causes severe chest pains and an instant headache, and I get really, 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 really hot. And I'm not so sure about this because I don't actually look at my face, but I'm pretty sure my face turns bright red. I found if I drink incredibly slow that I can avoid the feeling. And I found if I drink frozen drinks, I don't get that feeling unless you drink at the speed you get brain freeze. So, possibly alcohol intolerant. So, getting drunk was not actually possible. I was taught, if I ever got married, to just make it work, no matter what. It wasn't long before we got divorced, and not long after that I found out he passed me herpes and vaginitis. Woohoo! I would flip off the screen, but you guys, it's not your fault, it's his fault. In order to get a divorce, I did background checks, and I contacted apparently his previous wives, and I found out that this is the type of thing it was likely to do, and that he scammed his first wife, and she had to pay him to get that son of a bitch out of her life, which that shouldn't happen to anyone. Quite honestly, I didn't want anything from him. I was the one that didn't have a job anymore, but he wanted alimony from me, and he wanted to take my father's house, which, yeah, that's not gonna happen. I found out that there was an arrest warrant for him, and I searched around to see if I could find it, and I did, and I called it in. It's my only option. My lawyer is the one who found him and got him to sign the paperwork. And she was so wonderful. I am so lucky I had a lawyer like that. I didn't come forward because I was told to make the marriage work, no matter what, even if that meant being drugged. I couldn't prove I was drugged because by the time we got anywhere near a doctor, it would have worn out of my system anyway. It was weeks before we came anywhere near a doctor. So that I couldn't be tested, and the rape kit couldn't be tested or anything like that. It had been too long. So all I had was my word against his. I knew the court wouldn't do anything about that. They didn't care. The last time was just before I started college. The first year I moved to Oregon, a neighbor hooked me up on a blind date with her boyfriend's roommate, Ezekiel. I liked him. Actually, I liked him a lot. After a while, we became friends with benefits. For the most part, the sex wasn't bad. I mean, it wasn't pleasurable for me because I have endometriosis, but it wasn't bad. Most of the time, I didn't have pain or anything, but it wasn't bad. Actually, there was one time that it was actually pretty amazing. I don't know what happened that time exactly, but one time it was really amazing. It was because of that time that I held on for so long. I was kind of hoping eventually we could actually have a real relationship because, seriously, that time was amazing. Anyway, I hope that someday he would be ready for a relationship. As the years went on, sex became more painful. One night he came over and we were having sex and it started to hurt more than normal. I told him I needed to stop because it was hurting. And it was getting worse. He said, well, what if I do it this way? And he would move just a little bit. I told him no. And I needed him to stop. I told him over and over and over that it hurt. The pain was excruciating. I couldn't get him off of me. I started to cry and he continued until he finished. When he finished, I went to the bathroom and I found I was bleeding. I told him and all he said is, oh well, sorry, I'm drunk. It took several hours to stop the bleeding. He didn't give up. I told him we would never do anything again. But he wouldn't accept that. He continued to call and text and email, trying to convince me to let him come over to have sex again. I reminded him what he did, and all he would ever say is, I was drunk. Drunk is not an excuse. I told him no over and over and over, but he never listened. Finally, I lied to him and told him I was moving and switching houses with my cousin, who was my doppelganger, and I was getting married when I got there. He texted me the day after I told him I moved, and I acted like my cousin and I told her not to give him my new last name or where I lived. I haven't heard from him since. I didn't come forward that time because of the 4 previous assaults. And because I knew I would be blamed for saying yes for the years before. That's happened several times. I know a lot of women who went to court over a rape, over someone who they had given permission for in the past, and the court actually said, well, you said yes all these years ago, so that doesn't apply now. Well, I'll get into that later, but I didn't come forward because I already had prior knowledge that the courts ignore cases like that. They don't believe us. They don't consider it rape. So I didn't come forward. I knew the courts wouldn't listen to me. I knew spousal rape and rape is not seen as rape in the eyes of most courts. I knew I would be victim blamed. Those are my experiences. And now the points that I must make. And this is the part where I might get a little bit more angry. After the last one, I decided the best way for me to say no is through computers. I just keep people away. And just keeping people away. Okay, I see that. Yeah, even though I wrote it, it's kind of hard for me when I'm upset. My eyes are a little bit blurry. My nose is a little bit stuffed. I'm having a hard time breathing because of crying. Big surprise. So I'm having a hard time reading the screen. I avoided dating, and I avoided letting anyone touch me. There was actually a guy in one of my classes that wanted to go on a date with me, and he was a really nice guy. He really was. And as the date came closer to actually going on a date with him, the anxiety was just overwhelming. And I finally just called him and I told him about my divorce and what happened there. And he said he understood. He was really nice, and I really, really hope he found someone wonderful. I really do. Because he was really nice, he was really understanding, and he said if I am ever ready to date, to let him know. He was really nice. Most men are not that understanding under those circumstances, but he was really nice. I'm very lucky. He was so nice. Let's see. I am one of the millions of women that have been hiding in the dark because of how we are treated when we come forward. The first sexual assault set up all the others. I tried to come forward and I was blamed and told they could do what they wanted. It took me decades to realize it wasn't my fault. I didn't do anything wrong. A child shouldn't have been firing a teacher in the first place. That was his job. If he truly wanted him fired, he would have been the one to fire him. He set us up. It wasn't my fault. It wasn't my friend's fault. We did nothing to warrant that. Nothing. That isn't right. Every single one of us has a right to say no. We have a right to be heard. We have a right to be able to speak up without being put through it over and over and over again. I know how the comments will go on this video. I doubt I will read them because I know I'm not strong enough to hear them. I know my abusers will be pissed and most likely come after me again. I am not coming forward to get attention. With every fiber in my being, I hope you forget who I am. I hope you forget my face, but I hope you remember my story and remember that each and every person that comes forward has a story and needs to be listened to. Stop victim blaming. When someone comes forward, listen to them. Don't tell them, get over it. Or you'll get over it. Or anything along those lines. It isn't something we can simply get over. It is very important to validate their feelings. I can't tell you how important it is when someone comes to you and tells you their story to just listen, understand, and believe them. It is the job of the courts to focus on the everyone's innocent until proven guilty. If you are not the prosecuting attorney, if you are not the judge or the jury, just listen and believe them. And if you are one of those, keep an open mind. Don't believe them, don't disbelieve them, and sure as hell, don't victim blame. I'm serious. Don't victim blame. With everything that has been going on lately in the news, we have been seeing double standards of why men get angry. Let's go through that again. With everything that's been going on in the news lately, we have been seeing the double standard of when men get angry, they are being antagonized and have a right to get angry. But when a woman like me gets angry, we are told we are completely hysterical and irrational. It doesn't matter if it's a man or a woman. Anger is anger. Sadness is sadness. We all have emotions. I'm so glad we all have emotions. Stop using the emotions of women to blame them for what happened. Our emotions are not permission to do things to us. And it doesn't prove that something didn't happen or it did happen. We all have emotions. And those emotions are there for our survival. It really is. Society uses anything they can to call us liars. Emotions are just one tool they use against us. They can claim silent survivors don't exist. Well, I'm here to tell you that we do exist, and I am one of them. There are millions of us out there in silence and in darkness. There aren't just women out there hiding their experiences and scared to be heard, but men too. Sexual assault is not contained to women alone. Women are just more likely to be sexually assaulted and end up with PTSD. The men need to come forward just as much as the women do. We all need to tell our stories. We all need to stop locker room talk, such as men can't be raped, or women like to be grabbed. The only thing locker room talk does is encourage rapists, abusers, and encourages people who have been victimized to stay silent. You might not know this, men, but the locker room talk, you might actually be saying that around a man who it happened to. And I know a lot of you don't give a rat's ass about their feelings. But the truth is, I care. I don't like that they feel isolated and they are silenced by this stupid, masculine, toxic masculinity that you guys think has to be shown in a locker room. Stop with the locker room talk already. Seriously. Then when someone does come forward, they are told the only reason to wait so long or to come forward is because they want fame, as I mentioned before. Well, I have something to tell you. There is nothing good about coming forward. We are humiliated, threatened, demeaned, and put on trial for doing what's right. I didn't put this in the writing, but I wanted to mention this. I actually supported someone who did go to trial. And before she went in to testify, before we even got the process rolling, the advocate sat down with us and told us one thing you should be aware of when moving forward, especially in a court case like this. The judge, the jury, and the attorneys, and anyone else you run across will victim blame you. They will harass you. And when you're on the stand, you will be forced to go through that and feel that pain over and over and over. I don't know how she went through with the trial, honestly, because just getting to the trial was really difficult for her. When she finished testifying, she came out of the courtroom, and you could tell how hard it was on her. She was crumbling in front of me. I felt so bad for her because going through it over and over again is very difficult. Going through it once is difficult, but having to be forced to relive it is even worse. It's not right. We put ourselves in vulnerable positions when we come out trying to get justice for ourselves. And we hope that when we come forward, it will stop it from happening to other people, to other women and other young boys and other men. I'm actually putting myself in danger by doing this because I've opened myself up to their attacks again. With this, Ezekiel now knows that I lied to him. So he might come after me. And the others hear everything too. The only one I'm safe from is the first one because, well, he's dead. If you have never been sexually assaulted, your opinion on when we should come forward, if you were telling the truth, is meaningless. Because you have no idea the pain and the fear we have gone through. You have no idea how hard it is to face what happened to us. You have no idea what it is like to question every single thing you have done in your entire life, trying to figure out what you did to deserve it. Your opinion is meaningless. It really is meaningless. I'm sorry, but it's meaningless. The National Center for PTSD through the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs reported this morning when I went to the link. I found it's been removed. But this is a study I came across in my last year getting my psychology degree at PSU. Most early information on trauma and PTSD came from studies of male veterans, mostly Vietnam veterans. Researchers began to study the effects of sexual assault and found women's reactions were similar to male combat veterans. Women's experiences of trauma can also cause PTSD. This finding led to more research on women's exposure to trauma and PTSD. In addition, women are more likely to suffer PTSD than men. In the article that I have in the description, it has a little snippet that I took from the article before they took it down. What happens after trauma? After trauma, some women may feel depressed, start drinking or using drugs, or develop PTSD. Women are more than twice as likely to develop PTSD than men. 10% for women and 4% for men. There are a few reasons women might get PTSD more than men. The first one is women are more likely to experience sexual assault. Sexual assault is more likely because sexual assault is more likely to cause PTSD than many other events. Which, honestly, that's a little bit scary to think about. Women may be more likely to blame themselves for traumas experienced than men. Why would you think that sexual assault is something we can just get over? You don't tell vets with PTSD to just get over it nearly as often as you tell assault victims. When we come out, you always tell us to get over it. With veterans with PTSD, you tell them, So if you're a veteran, this is something I've heard all the time. With them, you say, well, I didn't get PTSD. You must be weak. Well, no, they're not weak. They experienced a trauma that got them. It's a trigger for them. And telling anyone to get over a traumatic experience is ignorant and selfish. And the words just can't come to me because I didn't write this down for very good reason. Your opinion about just get over it is literally meaningless because you don't understand. And if you don't understand, just shut up about it because you don't get it. You don't get it. You don't get it. It is decades past time for change. We really need to change our society and our beliefs on assaults, especially sexual assaults. Every time I hear someone victim blame me or anyone else, I am that fragile girl crying, running to my mother for justice and failing. I am that teenager in a dark corner, depressed. I am that adult curled in a bathtub with water washing over me, crying. I am that woman sitting in the bathroom trying to stop the bleeding. I relive each and every one of the traumas every time I hear someone victim blame. I relive it every time I hear someone say something along the lines of, they were asking for it. Just look at what they're wearing. Just get over it. It's in the past. We don't want to ruin his life. I am sure you're exaggerating. And one that actually triggered my seizures in June was, survivors shouldn't be in self-defense classes. And I'm sure you've heard a lot of the others. It doesn't matter what we wear. What I'm wearing right now is very much like what I wore every single time I was assaulted. This is the type of thing I wore every time I was around the men who assaulted me. I have always been a conservative dresser. Yes, I was thin, but I was always a conservative dresser. And I'm not the only one. The majority of women I've talked to that have been sexually assaulted were conservative dressers. Some of them wore pants. Our clothes really don't matter. The lack of clothing does not increase our probability, and it doesn't decrease it either. Our clothes don't change one damn thing in the heads of these abusers. They like the power. They like hurting us. And it's very important to stop blaming women for the sexual assault. It's also, you don't blame the boys that were sexually assaulted by the Catholic priests, but you will blame the women. Stop it. It's not their fault. It's not our fault. It's not my fault that I was sexually assaulted. It's not my fault I was violated. And it's not theirs either. Sorry. As I mentioned before, it's a very emotional subject for me. As I mentioned, it doesn't matter what we wear. I even had one guy tell me that my conservative dress, he said he wanted to know what was under the baggy clothes. It didn't matter to him that I was covered from head to toe. It didn't matter that we were in public. He wanted it, and he wouldn't stop coming at me. The only reason he didn't get to is a guy came up and stood in front of me blocking his path. My conservative style did not stop him. Another man had to stop him. I was frozen in fear, and a man protected me. A good man protected me. I ask others who have stayed silent to make videos about their experiences and use the hashtag why I didn't report. You don't have to give your abuser's full name. If you don't feel comfortable with it, you don't have to give their names at all. And you don't have to give yours. My video has my face on it because last night I decided I was angry and hurt and I wanted them to see my face. I want them to know. But when you do a video, you can adjust the settings so that they can see your emotions and your body language without them seeing you. You can adjust the various settings depending on your camera, depending on the settings that it'll have. But you can make it a negative image and they can't see who you are, but they can hear your voice. Where was I? You don't have to give abusers full name and you don't have to give yours. You don't even have to show your face. You can block it out with a mask or even a piece of paper if you want. I didn't give the first name because I didn't give the first name of the first one because he's dead. I didn't give the second because we had just started dating and he did not go to my school. So I hadn't put his name into my long-term memory. He was a redhead and was obsessed with his stupid sports car. I put the first name of the next two to let my family know why I have gotten angry over the years when they give my personal information to them. They will know who Jeff is, and I want Ezekiel to know what he did was wrong, no matter what. I feel if people hear us tell our stories and not just try to read it, maybe they will understand a bit better. If more of us come out with our complete stories about what happened and why we didn't come forward, maybe we can prevent anyone else from feeling this in the future. Every single one of us is important. Every single story is important. Every single reason is important. No one should be ignored and no one should be victim blamed. We should not still be living with sex offenders walking free. We really shouldn't. Please stop victim blaming. Please help us move forward in life. Please stop making us relive it over and over and over. Stand up and do something about them. Don't let people like Brett Kavanaugh gain power to facilitate sex offenders. We need to get people like Trump and Kavanaugh out of power and work towards stopping sex offenders, not giving them free rein. We must stop them. I stand with Dr. Ford and all other survivors. I stand most with the silent survivors because I have been one of them for so long. We must stop men like Trump and Kavanaugh being put in positions of power where they can facilitate abusers and sex offenders. That is what I wrote on WordPress. That's my story. And I would really appreciate it if you guys share. I know it's a difficult story, and seeing a woman cry, especially a large, ugly woman, is a bit difficult. And hearing the tone of my voice and getting angry and everything is very difficult. Now, as you'll notice, the article, it isn't very well done. I really did try, but every time I was trying to edit or type, I started crying and I couldn't think. So it's seriously messed up. It's easier for me to help tell someone else's story than it is my own. I promise in the future, my articles will be have APA referencing. I found this time to be very emotional and too emotional for me to be able to properly edit. I hope you will share my story after this and try to help others understand why it is so important to fight, to teach each girl that they are valuable, and by taking all assaults seriously and stopping people like Trump and Kavanaugh, not only from getting away with assault, but also preventing them from achieving power that allows sex offenders to get away. And to all of those girls and all of those men who are staying silent, it's not your fault. It's not any of our fault. It's theirs and theirs alone. They chose to violate us. And yes, it possibly some of us could have found a way to prevent it, but without learning it, how the hell are we supposed to stop it? Without society encouraging men to treat women with respect, and without the Catholic Church stopping priests, what the hell are we supposed to do? We can't stop it until we have the training and the knowledge to stop it. We can't stop it until we have society standing beside us with just as much passion to stop it as we do. It's not your fault. And for all those young girls who have been watching all of this and suddenly feel like your life is meaningless, bullshit. You have a right to say no. And I want you to scream it from the rooftops if you need to. If you don't want to do anything with a guy, say no. And I encourage every single one of you to find a self-defense class. If you live in the Portland area, I would suggest going to PSU self-defense class, because in my opinion, it is the best one I have ever seen. It's amazing. I have seen some amazing students go in and out of that class, and the teachers are absolutely fantastic. They're completely understanding. They're wonderful. And I very much encourage you to find a class like that and take it. Every single life is important and valuable. Never let anyone tell you anything different. You matter. Your story matters. The reason you didn't come forward matters. Let's all go out there and show them who we really are. And show them that we exist. It's decades past stopping these assholes. Let's work together. If you want to share your story, if you want to do it written in a long article, you can contact me here on Facebook or on my WordPress page. We'll work together to get your story written, and if you want, a video. If you don't know how to do the blurring, I believe that there's some systems that I might be able to use to blur for you. And I might be able to get some friends in the local area to teach me how to blur it a little bit. And if that's what you want, I'll do it. I will share it on my WordPress. I don't know if I can share video on here yet. I'm still learning. And I will share the video on my video and story, of course, on my Facebook and my Google account. And as soon as I can live stream on YouTube, which is where I was planning on doing this, I will share with YouTube. And hopefully one of these days I'll gather up some of the stories and make another live stream, hopefully this time through Google, to tell people about some of the stories and some of the experiences. And I will not put your names. I will put anonymous. And I'll talk about anything else to go along with that and how we would work it out when you contact me. But you matter. Girls matter. All of those boys that were assaulted by priests, we all matter. Every single one of us matters. And it's time for us to learn that. I hope that this wasn't too difficult, and I really hope you guys will share this. And maybe do something nice for someone, because you never know how it can lift your spirit.